I'm James. I'm a PM on the developer community team, which lives inside our developer division, which oversees all the amazing developer tools that you use. And with me,
I'm Rachel, and I'm a PM on the .NET MAUI team.
And Rachel and I have worked together for about 18 years. Can you believe that? No. We started doing mobile development back in Mono days, found Xamarin. We both worked at Xamarin, got acquired.
Yeah, definitely.
And then now we're here at Microsoft 8 years later. Can you believe that? Nope. Anyways, that's my story. Rachel and I worked together for many years, and you're on the engineering team and now you're PMing.
Yeah. So I was lucky to join the .NET MAUI team as my first full-time job. And I joined as an engineer. And like 3 years in, I switched to PM. So now I'm a PM on the same team because who doesn't love .NET MAUI?
And what that means is like if you have any problems, I just tell people to report a problem in Visual Studio. I just like, get out, done.
I can do that now too.
Perfect. Okay, cool, perfect. We're going to tell you all about what's new and what's next. How many of you have a pretty good idea of what .NET MAUI is? Not everyone. Okay, we'll do a brief little, well, hey, here's how it works. Mm-hmm. How many of you are building apps with .NET MAUI today? Yes.
Nice.
How many of you are Xamarin folks too? Yes.
Woo.
How many of you have ever seen me speak about Xamarin anytime ever in your life? Oh, nice, cool. Yes, Bing Chat was right. I do exist.
Yeah.
I am a person. So we're gonna tell you all about what's new and what's next. We're kind of in a nice little middle spot right now, kind of in the summer. We call it the beta summer. At least that's what I call it, which means that we already released a bunch of stuff, and a bunch of stuff is like coming soon. And not only from Microsoft, but also from Apple and Google for all the new different devices. Mm-hmm. Now, if you haven't started your journey actually building mobile or even client applications, well, there's good reason, right? I'm a longtime Windows developer turned Android developer turned iOS and Mac and all the things developer. And it's because there's billions upon billions of devices in the world. It's kind of hard to estimate. This is the best that our marketing team could do is like, I don't know, 7 billion devices or so in the world, but those are like active devices, right? That can be tracked in real time, that are actively connected to the App Store. So tons of desktop computers, tons of mobile phones. I mean, I'm literally carrying around 2 with me. When I travel, I have like 18 devices, and y'all probably have like 25 devices with you right now. There's like so many. Mm-hmm. Are you an iPhone user or an Android user?
I'm an iPhone user.
Oh, okay. I was an Android user for all my life, and then I moved.
Same.
And that's Blue Bubble. So during the pandemic, I was like, I just need FaceTime. I just need to talk to my family and have things work. But now I got the RCS, so I don't know. But there's so much, and they're always evolving and changing. There's always new things for us to use. So even when we're talking about just these devices, like we're not even talking about TVs, connected TVs. We're not talking about watches. We're not talking about things that are shoving on your face, right? These are just the classic iOS, Android, and Windows and Mac devices. But there's billions of them that we can target, whether we're building applications at work, internally at our enterprise, or for our customers, or for people around the world. And at Microsoft, we actually have a huge investment in all sorts of different pieces of technology. So it might be kind of weird. You kind of like, oh, I'm at a Visual Studio conference. I'm like, I don't know, I see like React on there, like web stuff and PWAs. Well, we care about all developers, and we want developers to hopefully use Windows to build for anything that they're building, hopefully use our tools, but also make sure that Windows is a great place to build Windows applications. So we have big investments in native Windows with WPF and WinForms and WinUI 3, big in cross-platform development, obviously with .NET, but also with the web, hybrid, and web development as well. So we want developers to use whatever they want to build specifically for Windows. And some of that story is multi-platform development. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Ooh, fancy transition. Look at that. We're going to talk mostly about what we're doing to help developers build better applications, not only for Windows, but for Mac, for iOS, for Android, and for other devices, whether it's fully native 100% or hybrid that we're going to talk about as well. And the biggest part that we're going to start with is .NET MAUI, which is what you all came for, which is our multi-platform app UI.
You have the clicker?
Yeah, you can have the clicker.
Ooh.
Yeah, we didn't rehearse that transition. That was a good transition.
So let's talk about .NET MAUI. So .NET MAUI is our multi-platform app UI offering in .NET, and it enables you to build your apps, as James was saying, on Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows. And that's all from one single project and one single code base, which is super cool. And since it's part of the .NET ecosystem, using MAUI also means you can leverage all the APIs using C# and your C# knowledge, but also you can access the expansive world of all of the .NET libraries that .NET provides, and of course, the best developer tools, Visual Studio and VS Code. And .NET MAUI is also completely open source on GitHub. It wouldn't be what it is today without our wonderful community, including all of you. And so yeah, today we're going to be diving into all of the awesomeness of .NET MAUI, and as James was saying, not only how it enables developers to be productive in terms of building great native apps, but also in terms of its flexibility with building great hybrid apps as well. So let's start by taking a closer look at how .NET MAUI works. So .NET MAUI is built on .NET. So that means you have access to the full .NET runtime and libraries, and our engineering teams have made them available to you by optimizing the runtime to run natively on each of the platforms. And then .NET MAUI offers access to the native platform with C# through what we call bindings or binding technologies. And this means that MAUI uses the native UI libraries for each of the platforms. So you can interface directly with the Java APIs for Android, for example, the Swift Objective-C APIs on iOS, and so forth. And this also allows you to have access to all of those APIs from just using C# as part of .NET MAUI. And now the layer we work in the most is what we call the device abstraction layer, which offers access to the controls, APIs, and all the different assets that you use in your app. And you write your app's user interface against this abstraction layer in C# or in XAML markup. And when the app runs, it renders the native UI elements on each of the platforms. So all of that is what makes up the rich framework of .NET MAUI. And then, of course, there's your app code, which is the business logic of your application, your models, view models, databases, cloud integrations, all the fun .NET stuff. And that is shared fully across the platform and gives you access to all of this through the power of .NET MAUI.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk about it, that device abstractions, mostly what we'd be coding against. But it is nice you get access to those underlying levels, which is really important. This is kind of like, I think, the best representation in a long time that we've had of actually how the thing works. We've minimized it, but it is a lot of boxes. But when we talk about .NET MAUI, we talk about all of that different iOS and Android and Mac things as well, and the core compilation technology and running .NET on there. Now you do see like WinUI 3 is like over here, right? And you're like, well, why isn't it in the MAUI box? Well, the abstraction uses WinUI 3, but as the Windows team continues to develop the Windows App SDK and WinUI, the MAUI team builds the abstraction against it. So that way it can continue to evolve, and that's the Windows team doing its work. It's not in the box of MAUI, it's like kind of a dependency. And what that means is that other vendors can come on and create their own abstractions on top of this. So Samsung, for example, with their Tizen platform also is part of it. We actually have some open source community abstractions for like Linux, for example, that are out there. But on top of that, while we support .NET MAUI, there's other open source community and companies building on top of those .NET for Android, .NET for iOS, and .NET for Mac. They're building their own abstractions like Uno and Avalonia, which are popular open source projects as well, which are part of the greater ecosystem. We don't call them competitors because we want you to pick the best technology for you, whether it's from Microsoft or not, but we provide those base layers.
Yep. And again, the great thing about all of this is that it's all in one code base with the ability to easily multi-target from a single project. And we'll go into all of this a little bit more later, but the single project here, let me see if I can use the pen.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So you have access to the specific device integrations through the platform folder here, and also compile time directives, and even a simplified way of accessing all of your resources, which you can see here. Excuse my scribbles. The .NET MAUI handles the app icons, the splash screens, images, fonts, and so much more from the single project, so you can just focus on writing your code. And as I mentioned, we'll dive further into this soon when we get to the demos, but let's talk a bit about .NET 8.
Yeah, so there's a lot happening. So .NET MAUI released with .NET 6 several years ago, and the team's been continuing to iterate every single release. So .NET MAUI is part of .NET. It's integrated deeply into it. When you install .NET MAUI is a workload. So iOS, Android, and all those things ship as workloads, kind of like .NET Aspire does as well. And they continue to update. And we'll talk about the release cadence. There's a big release every year, but of course, just like .NET ships every month, so does .NET MAUI. The team has been really hyper-focused on a few scenarios. Early on, it was how do we enable every Xamarin developer to migrate to .NET MAUI? And now the team has really been focused on what are the biggest things that developers are asking us for in their development cycle and for their apps. And more than anything, they've been asking for more performance, better memory management, starter fast up time, just make it better, faster, stronger, clean up any bugs, fix anything that's there, right? And make sure it's super stable for me. And that's really what the team has been hyper-focused on, including the work that we'll talk about today for hybrid development too. And it's really kind of paid off. Like in .NET 8 alone, the team has been really hyper-focused on closing PRs, closing issues with hundreds and thousands of PRs closed. And what's great about this, and because .NET MAUI is open source, is that there's a lot of contributions from the community. And this was just between sort of .NET 7 and .NET 8. But since then, the team has been super aggressive fixing bugs. And we pulled the latest stats just from November to today. And the team has already closed and merged in over 1,100 PRs and almost 2,200, I mean, I'm sure probably over 2,200 now, issues.
Yeah.
Now, just because there are a lot of issues, you might be saying, whoa, this is crazy, there's a lot of bugs. Well, I mean, that's just close issues, right? They might be questions, they might be duplicates, things like that. But what it means is the team is super hyper-focused. And as you can imagine, with any single platform, it gets complicated, actually just trying to make that one platform awesome. They're worried about 4 and all those layers and making sure that all of the abstractions work seamless. But the cool part that I love is the service releases. In .NET 8, the team made a fundamental change, which is shipping all of the .NET MAUI components back as NuGets. We did it. We went on. We had them. Didn't have them. We got them again. And what it means is that you can have your version of .NET 8 on your machine, and you can just update .NET MAUI as NuGet. So if you don't have like the latest SDK, it's okay. If you update your latest SDK, it'll automatically pull in the service release, but you can upgrade to a service release. So that's nice because it means if your development machine and your CI/CD server are out of sync with the exact point release of .NET, then you'll always make sure that you are basically pinning it. So every month you get a brand new service release, and there's tons of changes and optimizations inside of it. And what's great is that it's super easy. Inside of Visual Studio, VS Code, NuGet update, you're good to go. And what you'll see over here is that we have the version numbers. So previously we had like a very nice little syntax of MAUI version, which uses the SDK that you have installed, but you can pin it automatically, which is super cool, which I love. Yeah.
All right. So .NET MAUI is great and all, but we get asked a lot, who's using .NET MAUI? Who are our customers? Well, you might recognize some of these brands who are all using .NET MAUI. And we continue only to see more and more companies adopting .NET MAUI. Here are some more that you can find in the Google Play Store. And when I say that we're seeing more, oh, my transition's just automated.
Yeah, we are seeing
it's gonna be like more and more and more.
You can rewind it, go back.
It's okay.
Right? Okay.
They already saw the effect.
Okay.
But anyways, you can see I was being totally serious. Like we really are seeing more and more and more folks who are using .NET MAUI every single day. And this is only taking into consideration, again, the .NET MAUI apps that are available in the Google Play Store. And with that alone, there are currently over 230% the number of MAUI apps that were out there when .NET 8 was released less than a year ago.
Yeah, it's wild.
I think that's super cool. And I'm excited to see this number just continue to skyrocket.
Yeah.
And so thank you all for contributing to .NET MAUI, for building with .NET MAUI, providing your feedback, being here, and for making .NET MAUI awesome, because it truly wouldn't be possible without y'all.
It's true.
Yeah. So back to you, James.
Oh. So we talked a little bit about the core of how exactly .NET MAUI works, what people are using it, what's kind of happened in .NET 8. We'll dive a little bit through that. But when it comes to productivity, our IDEs and our code editors are fundamental. Specifically, we want to ensure that developers can build applications no matter what operating system they're building on. Now, of course, there's some complexities with that because Apple and Google, and of course, Microsoft with Windows only ships different SDKs and debuggable targets in certain places. We wanted to first make sure that, hey, every single developer, no matter what operating system, can use an amazing IDE and code editor no matter where they're at. So we started recently with .NET 7 into .NET 8, working with VS Code and making VS Code a world-class code editor for C# with the C# Dev Kit and with the new .NET MAUI extension. This means that you can build .NET MAUI applications on Windows, on Mac, or on Linux. Now you can build different operating systems, 4 different operating systems on each of them. So on Windows, you can do Android and Windows. On Mac, iOS, Mac, and Android. And on Linux, you can build Android applications. Nice thing about Android application is it being open source is that it kind of ships SDKs everywhere. Windows on Windows, Mac on Mac, and Apple is special and keeps all of their iOS technology on a Mac. So it's only there. So what that means is that it's flexible, right? Your same setup, your same environment, no matter where you're at, is able to develop across those different operating systems. Now, it is a lightweight code editor, and they've built an amazing tooling that Rachel's going to show off into VS Code, and we'll start there. But we also have had sort of historic, amazing support for Visual Studio on Windows itself as the main IDE. So Visual Studio 2022 brings in all sorts of additional enhancements as a full IDE that I'll be talking about and showing you some of the productivity features on Windows, including actually the ability to develop for iOS magically from a Windows machine, which is an exclusive Visual Studio 2022 feature. It should work. It's where my provisioning profiles totally work. Now, these are what's available from Microsoft, but again, because it is a big open source community, there are obviously other IDEs like Rider, for example, from JetBrains that are super compatible with MAUI, right? And I have no fear talking about the amazing ecosystem around .NET. We should be proud of it. We shouldn't run from it. We should embrace everything that's awesome about it. But let's start off and start with VS Code, and we're going to hot swap.
All right.
Oh my gosh.
I need the.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, never mind.
Wow.
Okay.
It worked.
Yeah. So here we are. I just opened VS Code, totally blank. And I'm going to create a new .NET MAUI project.
Can you get a little bit bigger?
Yeah.
Command plus it for me. Perfect.
Okay. Amazing.
Nice.
So I'm going to create a new .NET MAUI project. And I'm able to do that because in my extensions, I have downloaded this .NET MAUI extension for VS Code. And that's also built on top of the C# and C# Dev Kit extensions you see here, which gives us access to all of the powerful C# development tooling and features that we will see soon. And I also have all these other extensions because I watched James' video on extensions recently.
Oh, cool.
And I also learned that you can create profiles. So this is my experimental one because I'm on pre-release and I also have these extensions I've never tried.
Did you know that I used VS Code for like 20 years and I never knew you could do profiles?
I didn't know either.
Anyone,
so I saw your video
how many
last
use
week.
VS Code? VS Code users? Did you guys know about profiles at all?
So cool.
It's so cool. So check this out. So you could just create a new profile. You don't have to do it, but you create profiles. Because like when you open VS Code, but you have like 8,000 extensions that all boot up and it's like, oh gosh. But what you can do is you can create, hey, this is my JavaScript profile. This is my Angular profile. And basically it's custom code editor settings and extensions for that profile. So you can be like, here's my MAUI extension. Here is my Blazor, profile. And then it's cool because what Rachel's showing is you can install the stable releases and the pre-releases and just toggle between the profiles, which is great for us because we break stuff all the time. So,
yeah, and you can even customize your icon here, which I thought was super cute. So my experimental one, I decided to make have this little lab
I
flask
like that.
icon.
So if you've taken one thing away from today, wow, profiles in VS Code. We really did our job. It's awesome. Anyways, sorry, Rachel.
Yeah. Okay, how do I get rid of this?
Escape. It's there forever. You can't get rid of it.
No. Oh, thanks.
Escape, but you got to click on it first.
I thought I
It's
clicked.
like, yeah.
All right. So yeah, we have our extensions, and now we are able to create a new .NET MAUI project since I have the .NET MAUI extension for VS Code in VS Code. So I'm going to go to the Explorer here, and I'm going to just create .NET project by clicking on this button. I can also get to it by clicking Command-Shift-P on my Mac or Control-Shift-P on the Windows, and I could just type in .NET New Project like that as well. And then once I click on that, it'll show me the different options for .NET projects that I can create. And since we're creating a .NET MAUI app, I'm going to click on that one. And I'm going to create a new folder for it. I'm going to call it VS Live Demo Open. And I get to name my project, which I'll also call VS Live Demo. And create project. And then
those are the same templates. Like those templates just came because you have .NET, right? You didn't do anything special besides install .NET, install the MAUI extension, just shows up.
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
And then here you can see that my .NET MAUI template loaded. And you can see here similar. It'll look more like the screenshot in Visual Studio when James demos the Visual Studio part of it in a bit. But you can see the same thing here. We have the platforms, we have our properties, our resources, everything's in here. And we also have the Solution Explorer, and we get this through the C# Dev Kit. And this gives us access to seeing everything kind of similarly as you may in Visual Studio. You can right-click this, clean, rebuild, build, similar to what you would see in Visual Studio if you are familiar with that. So let me open up the main page.xaml and the main page.xaml.cs. So the XAML and the C# files here. And we can see the template comes with a scroll view with a vertical stack layout inside, which contains an image of a .NET bot, labels that say hello world, welcome to .NET MAUI, and a counter button, which you can see here, it just counts up when you click on it. And yeah, so I'm going to now run this. Let's see it in action and make sure it looks the way we want it to. If I click on the curly braces down here, we can see the startup project has already been set to the only project I have in my VS Code right now, VS Live Demo. And the debug target has already been set to my Mac. And I can switch this later, which I'll show you, but I'm fine with deploying to my Mac for now. So I'm going to run it, which I can do either by pressing F5, or I can come here to the Run and Debug menu and just click Run and Debug. So I'm going to do that. And we should see the image and labels and button pop up. And something else you might have noticed here are the semantic properties. So semantic properties, .description, heading level, hint, and actually into the C#, we also have semantic screen reader.announce. And you might be wondering, what are all these semantic things? And I am really stoked about the semantic stuff because when I was an engineer, I helped build those APIs. And it's actually for accessibility. So it is how you dictate what the screen readers should read aloud on your various devices. So I'll show you that as well. So our Mac app has popped up. We can see here the image of the .NET bot, hello world, welcome to .NET MAUI, and the click me button, which if I click will update the text showing us how many times we've clicked the button.
Wow.
Yeah. So now I'm going to activate VoiceOver, which is the screen reader that comes built into our Macs, and show you the semantic properties working as well.
And this is important because, as Rachel said, accessibility, we want it to be the default. We don't want it to be thought afterwards, right? So it's so important to us that we want it to be in the default template. So you can get an idea of how you can make your applications accessible. And this is just one feature of accessibility. There's many features that are built into .NET MAUI and to our ecosystem as well. And we work closely with teams across Microsoft that are building applications with .NET MAUI to ensure that we adhere to the most stringent accessibility standards.
Yeah, we care a lot about accessibility at Microsoft, and we've really made sure that .NET MAUI is accessible as possible out of the box. And we even offer you these additional APIs to help you make it even more accessible. Otherwise, if you have something like an image and a screen reader user tries to navigate to the image, they won't know what it is, especially if they are blind or low vision and can't see it. So I'm going to turn on voiceover, and keep in mind, I am not the biggest, I'm not the most skilled voiceover user, so this might take a bit. I've muted for now until I figure out the controls, but okay. So here you can see the headings. So we have Hello World and Welcome to .NET Multi-Platform App UI here. And that shows up in this headings menu of VoiceOver because in our code, we have marked them to be heading levels. And the level thing is actually specific just to Windows. They have levels of headings, whereas the other platforms, it's a Boolean. So as long as you set a level, it will show up as a heading. So that's what that is. You don't hear it right now because I muted it, but I'm going to unmute my laptop now and navigate through it so you can hear that the descriptions we've set and the announcements we've set are being read aloud. Okay. So
.NET bot in erase car number 8 image. You are currently on an
it's
image.
coming from
To
my
begin interacting
MacBook.
with the contents of this image.
I think you hear it.
Option,
Okay.
shift, down arrow.
Yeah, so it read out that description that I set on the image of .NET bot and erase car number 8.
Do it again.
Ooh.
There you go.
Okay, let's try it again.
Adding value.
.NET bot in erase car number 8 image. You are currently on an image. To begin interacting with the contents of this image, press Control, Option, Shift, down arrow.
And then I'm going to go down now to the labels and the buttons. So
Hello, world.
we get
You are
Hello
currently on the
World.
Heading, Welcome to .NET Multi-Platform App UI.
Welcome to
are
.NET
currently on the
Multi-Platform App UI. And it reads out exactly as I've set those descriptions. And then the button.
Click 3 times, button. Counts the number of times you click. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control,
So
Option,
it reads out the
space.
button text and some more context. And then when I select the button by pressing Control, Option, Space, as it says here,
Click 4 times.
it reads the updated text out loud too. And that is because we have indicated with the semantic screen reader that we wanted to announce that button text again. So yeah, this all comes straight out of the box. This is our file new .NET MAUI app. So we saw it on Mac. Now let me run it on something else. Let me try iOS. So I click on the curly braces again, click on debug target, and I get this pop-up of all the devices that I currently have access to. So I want to run it on my iPhone.
And these are all simulators that are coming from Xcode that's installed on the
Mhm.
machine. So,
Yeah.
and there's many of them that are installed.
Yep. So I'm going to run it on this iPhone 15.
Oh, it even says running there. That's
Yeah,
cool. Wow.
that's helpful for me
That's very
to
helpful.
remember which one I already have open here, my iPhone 15.
And then additionally, if you had a Android device plugged in, for example, into your machine, it would pop up inside of there if it's in debug mode.
Mhm.
And the same for iOS. There's a little bit more work to get it onto an iOS device. You have to set up provisioning profiles, and Xcode helps with that. But it's sort of here, this sort of relationship where Visual Studio Code on a Mac is sitting side by side, Android Studio and Xcode, and they're sharing tooling together. And .NET MAUI and VS Code are sort of together in this journey to help you with this. And this is very common with all different sorts of different cross-platform technologies like Flutter and React Native and now .NET MAUI. So we can leverage the ecosystem around the different platforms.
Yep. Awesome. So we see the same thing here again in our iOS simulator. And now I want to take some time also to show you all some of the awesome features when it comes to developing with .NET MAUI. So there's something called Hot Reload, which enables us to see our changes in real time in the running app without having to stop and run the app over and over again. And it just enables us to be so much more productive and efficient when we are developing. So let's say here, I have hello world. I want it to say hello VS Live. I'm gonna just type that in and boom, it's already there. Normally I would have needed to stop running my code and then run it again just to see that simple text change. But here I just see it running immediately. Let's try something else. I want to set a background color. All right, so background color, do you see that?
I did see that. Oh, wow.
This IntelliSense right here. I forget sometimes what my properties are called element, so it's super helpful having it show up here, especially with something like colors, because I can never remember what all of the different colors are called.
You remember all 5,000 of them?
No.
By name specifically?
No, definitely not. So let's see. Look at that. I get all of the colors here, and I can just, even if I remember dark sea green, I don't remember what it looks like. So it's super helpful for me to click on it, be like, I don't like that color.
That reminds me of like, when you go to like Michael's, and then you get like those foam things because you're making, like, you want to put fake plants in it, like the foam things. I don't know what those things are called. Someone knows what I'm talking about. But then, like, you're as a kid, you're just like imprinting on all of them because you're like,
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with the foam things, but I get the analogy.
I'm sending one to Boston office for you.
Okay. Okay.
It's going to show up from Amazon.
I'll use it in our next demo. We can hold it up.
All right.
Okay, so I didn't like that color. Let's try light pink. Okay, I like that better.
Yeah, it's nice.
So yeah, you can see here how productive I'm being with the power of both hot reload and IntelliSense. I can really quickly iterate. I don't need to rerun this 20 million times just to pick the color I want. Let me also make this bigger. Let's see. Is it text size? I don't think it is because my IntelliSense is not showing me that. Maybe font size. There it is. So again, IntelliSense, super helpful. I want to make it big. Let's say 100.
Wow,
that's too big. Let me make it smaller because I still want it to fit on one line. I want it to be as big as possible, but fit on one line. So 50 is one line.
that's pretty good.
51, 52. 51 is the sweet spot, apparently.
Nice.
So yeah, it's nice that I can really tweak that super quickly because of hot reload and just get exactly what I want to see here. So yeah, that's hot reload and that's IntelliSense. And those are a lot of my favorite things about using VS Code. And of course, we can run it on Android as well, which I won't right now for the sake of time, but I do have it here already. I found a different shade of green I liked before.
Nice,
So.
I like that.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that all the templates are also themed light and dark mode. And I'll kind of show that off when I come over to my Windows machine because we also not want applications to be accessible, but we also want them to adhere to the latest native platform integration. So all the buttons here, while they are styled similarly, these are native buttons, which is why the accessibility features work and the density resolutions all work as well. But under the hood, those are still native buttons. So we've themed them to be the same out of the box because a lot of developers want that. But there are some niceties. So like on Android, there's little ripple effects and things like that that happen automatically.
Yeah, we actually have here in our resources, in our styles, this is where we've kind of created that common theme to set the styles across all the platforms for controls. And you could do the same thing in your own apps as well. Customize the colors and styles you want.
Yeah, and in the colors, for example, we did want to provide it. We heard a lot of feedback from developers that said, hey, like I have to create all of this styling, all these color sheets automatically, like make it easy for me. So now instead of hard coding strings, you can come in and change a value from purple for primary to whatever theme your company wants, which is great.
Yeah. Oh. All right.
And VS Code, like I said, is available everywhere. But if you are on Windows, we obviously can use VS Code, and all the features that Rachel just showed would work exactly the same. Besides, you can't do Mac or iOS development, so it'd be Windows and Android development. Let's see why. Let me duplicate. There we go.
Nice.
Cool. So here's my Visual Studio. So the few differences is that when you're using Visual Studio as a full IDE, it does a little bit more things for you. So when you're setting up VS Code, you have to sort of more kind of manually set up a few things. So install Xcode, install Android Studio, Java, the SDKs, things like that. And there's a beautiful walkthrough guide to do that. When you're inside of Visual Studio as a full IDE, it wants to try to hide a lot of that complexity for you. So there's just a one sort of checkbox for .NET MAUI here, which will give you all of the dependencies. It'll handle installing the Windows SDK, Java, Android SDKs, and all the dependencies for you automatically from the IDE. If you are wanting to jump between Visual Studio and VS Code, I usually recommend just letting Visual Studio 2022 handle the dependencies, and VS Code will just pick them up for you automatically if you're on Windows. But once you have that installed, you're pretty much ready to go. Inside of the brand new templates, you'll see a .NET MAUI section here, right there, MAUI. And you'll see all the different project templates in here. So there's some for class libraries and different components. And the main one here is the MAUI app, which will set it up for development. So this is going to look very similar. I just did file new project to exactly what Rachel showed. So we have all the platforms, including Tizen support in there. And there's Mac, there's Windows. And over here, we have all the same exact stuff, all the app icons, it's the same project. It's literally the same project.
Exactly the same.
So you get the same exact views. Now, the difference is that everything is sort of built into this drop-down menu to debug. So here we can see that it's asking if I want to deploy onto my Pixel emulator, onto my Windows device, onto iOS remote simulators or emulators, things like that automatically for me. And I can toggle between the different frameworks. So up here, if I go into example for the Android code, there's some Android code in here, and this will enable me to access Android code. If I go into the iOS folder, there's actual iOS code here. And that works because this is a single project that is multi-targeted. So what this is saying is, hey, there's a single project, and hey, Visual Studio, recognize that we're actually building and compiling for Android, iOS, Mac, and if I'm on Windows, Windows as well. And this project template does a bunch of other cool things. Like, for example, it handles the application title, the app identifier, the version numbers for you. So when Rachel was talking about the different resources, the team has tried to simplify other parts of development, such as all of this kind of complexity when it comes to app names. You don't have to set it in 5 different places. You set it right in your CS proj. Down here are also a bunch of resources like icons and splash screens and images and fonts and assets that Rachel was talking about. You can just drop in a PNG or an SVG, and .NET MAUI will resize it for you automatically based on the device that it is being deployed to. And again, it handles all the packages down here, just like normal packages. So this application is here. I'm going to go ahead and run it just on Android. So I just selected an Android emulator. If I plugged in an Android device, I would be good to go. And this is basically going to compile up the Android application into a native Android package, communicate through the Android debug bridge, which is what's installed with Android Studio or with Visual Studio. And then it's going to deploy the application right to my device here, which is really cool. And this is the same application. I don't have a screen reader on, it's there. I have a full emulator that's going on here. If I put this into dark mode, we can see that, boom, my application responds immediately. And that is because the default themes inside of .NET MAUI automatically adhere to light and dark theme. And you can customize that how you want. But out of the box, your app's going to work great for your users. But something to think about there. So that is why when we go into our main page, we can see that we have these styles that Rachel was talking about, headline and subheadline, that are on here. And if we go into them here, well, that works, cool, is that you can see that it's a label. It has the key of headline, and it's assigning font size and alignment and text color. So this is saying, hey, when it's in light mode, make it midnight blue. When it's in dark mode, make it white. So that's how it's adhering automatically to those theme changes, which is cool. Now, inside of Visual Studio, I'm going to also open up this little live preview. This is actually really neat. It's one of my favorite features. Again, it's a full IDE, so we get these kind of advanced features here. This is a live preview of my application. I can actually adjust the different sizes here. I could actually add little grid lines on here if I wanted to. I can make those like white, for example. So I could try to like fine tune pixel perfect inside of here, which is really nice. I could zoom things in. I could actually come in and tap on something. So that's actually kind of cool. Sometimes you have really big user interfaces. I can actually just hover over it. I can see the rendered and the text color and everything like that, but I can tap on it. And I'm not actually tapping on the actual app. I'm tapping on a representation of my running application. So you can see if I click, 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 it's not actually incrementing the click count. It's navigating me over here into the button.
Yeah, where it is in the code.
Wow, right? So if I want to come in and I want to say, instead of, hello world over here, I can say, hey, VS Live. And just like Rachel showed, is just going to update with hot reload there too. I can also add as many windows as possible in Visual Studio to make sure I really have a hard time seeing my actual code. But that's what's great about, the IDEs. But I can see this live visual tree representation here. So this is the entire structure of my application. This is just kind of file new. But we can see that we have my main page. I have a scroll view. I have this representation. So if you have a lot in your application, you just want to jump to the image, you want to jump to the vertical stack layout, I can easily jump around to those items as well. And that helps actually figure out a lot of different issues in your application. Now, on top of that, there's also another pane, because why wouldn't you have like yet another pane? This is the Live Property Explorer. So Rachel showed the IntelliSense, right? So if I wanted to come in to this Hello Live and I wanted to go in and say, font, you have all the same stuff, right? And I say font size 51, for example, there, it all works. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And there's a lot of properties under the hood. So over here is this brand new Live Property Explorer, which is showing me every single different property that's happening on the different elements that I tap on inside of here. So as I tap on the VS Live, it's going to show me the different elements that are here. And if I've changed anything in the representation, so we've changed them here from the default style, right? So I've actually overridden the XAML style. Wow, I didn't even know it did that. That's so cool. And it's saying, hey, you're kind of like CSS. You ever go into DevTools? And it's that. There you go. Yeah. So you can edit it, you can modify it, you can do all those things. You can see all the different values. Yeah. Awesome.
And just like that also, it doesn't actually change your code. So if you play around with the properties in Live Property Explorer, it won't update your code directly.
Yep.
And it gives you the freedom to kind of just play around in that debugging, editing mode so that you can make the changes in the code when you're ready.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. So I changed that to 100, but notice it still says 51.
Yeah.
So I can kind of do those CSS transforms, but with XAML, which is cool. And you can create all of this in C# as well. So you can do all of that. And the cool part too is that if you were to go into, for example, let me view my Solution Explorer over here. Where's it at? Oh, there it is. I can go into that code behind, right, that Rachel was talking about. So I'm going to go in and go in over here and I'm going to say, let me increase that plus equals, 100. I'm just going to hit save here. We have this little hot reload button. So just like the XAML, you can refresh. That actually does a full page refresh for me when I save it. But now when I click it, we can see that it's incrementing 100 at a time here, right? So I'm actually changing the code behind. There's obviously some limitations there, but I can change that back over here to plus here. And then I can go back and start to change it. So I can change my C# code. I can change my XAML as well, which is really nice. Now, I talked that you could deploy this to other things. So if I was to change this to Windows, I can just deploy right to my Windows machine. I have my Windows machine in developer mode, so that will go ahead and spark that up.
Nice.
Which will do that. And we'll let it deploy here. Oh, this is the thing where that new bug. The fun new bug that we introduced recently, which is rebuild it.
Fun.
Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
It's fun.
Oh, fun. So much fun. We love bugs.
Yeah. That's like, it's not going to do it until you're actually doing it live. So, so I'm just going to recompile the app and hopefully it redeploys. We'll see here. You're really into the
what?
Plus. You're like, well,
I think it's the pink. James was showing me before we started the talk, this pink theme. It's really, I need to get set up with it.
There you go. It's a bubble gum.
Bubble gum, right.
You have to turn on Visual Studio's new theming and then it kind of like works. Yeah,
okay.
it's nice. So, all right, so it's going to recompile up all the things over here, and I should be able to deploy. Fingers crossed. This is like a new fun feature that the engineering team introduced for us.
While we're
play with.
waiting,
Yeah.
can you show us GitHub Copilot?
Yeah, so if you came in and you were like, hey, what is this doing? That's what you're interested about. So up here, not only do we have GitHub Copilot enabled, but I could say, for example, let me go to this main page. I could say, how would I add a list view of monkeys in .NET MAUI for this page? So what's great is that you get a Copilot obviously inline, but I could chat with it. So if you were brand new, it would go ahead and give you not only the code, but this is actually giving me the code behind, and it actually just generated an entire XAML page.
So helpful.
For me.
Yeah. And we have GitHub Copilot and Copilot Chat in VS Code as well. And it's been a game changer for me in terms of my productivity.
It's pretty neat. So it's going to help you as you're coding, obviously along with IntelliCode and IntelliSense, but you're there. All right, so there's a Windows app. It's a real Windows application. It's here on my tab. It's good to go. Let me do one real thing really quick here is I'm going to go into this menu and I'm going to say iOS local device.
James' work iPhone.
This is my work iPhone, not my iPhone, but my work iPhone. So I plugged in my iOS device. This here, it's into my Windows machine. And it shows up inside of Visual Studio. Now, I have an Apple developer account. I've logged into Visual Studio with my Apple developer account. I've given Apple my $100 a year. And I plugged it in. I'm going to hit debug here. And this is going to start something I like to call iOS local deployment, but we've named it setup hot restart, which is not confusing at all. But it's an ability for Visual Studio to understand that I'm a developer. I'm going to select my account. And now Visual Studio is communicating with Apple's servers and doing a bunch of hard work to figure out these profiles to create a debug package to deploy to my actual iOS device. So this is actually basically taking my app code and putting it inside of a debug package that will then deploy onto my iOS device. Now, it's not going to have every single feature, like it can't use your app icon or launch screen or access some of the different features of iOS like Health Kit, for example, because you need to do that on a Mac with special entitlements. But for most engineering purposes, you can just simply launch your application onto your device. Now, what's neat about this is that it's starting up a hot reload cycle and it's going through a full deployment of the application. And we can see hello VS Live and my phone is in dark mode. But the other thing is that all of the same features and functionality work, such as the XAML live preview here. So all the hot reload features, all the things work brilliant, which is awesome. Cool. And that's a whirlwind tour.
Woohoo.
And it says that we're supposed to be at
we got a bit excited.
15 minutes in, 27 minutes. We're only 48 minutes in. So let's talk really quick about hybrid development as well. You've seen the tooling there. And a lot of that's new. A lot of that's been there for a long time, but it's good to give overview. Now with .NET MAUI, what's unique is with .NET, we want to give developers choice. Reach, depth, how much integration you want. I think with Reach, web obviously goes everywhere, can be everything, mobile responsive. You can create great websites, PWAs, things like that. With .NET MAUI, you get that full native integration, native APIs, native access to everything. But in the sweet spot is actually combining these technologies. And that's where we created something called Blazor Hybrid. Blazor Hybrid works in a bunch of different technologies like WinForms and WPF and in .NET MAUI. What that enables us to do is actually leverage all of the .NET MAUI infrastructure, but add in the ability to use web UI inside of your native applications. So you can embed them, you can access full web UI with WebView. You don't need any special internet or any special packages, you just are running web UI. You can use all of your favorite input controls of Blazor and validation and forms. You have great multi-platform abstractions with MAUI. You can distribute to the App Store. You can reuse your existing components that are out there, and you get all of the benefits of it. Now, I've booted up really quick here a dev box, and a dev box, I have .NET 9 installed on it over here, and it went to sleep, so let's see how fast it's going to reconnect. I should have clicked that button ahead of time. Oh, there it is. So it's kind of like a VM up there. So when you install .NET, this has been around since .NET, I think it launched with 6, but since 7 and 8 and things like that. When you install .NET MAUI, you're also going to see these Blazor hybrid app templates here. So you have Blazor hybrid, and in .NET 9, we're introducing a new one, which not only has your .NET MAUI backend, but also your .NET MAUI client, but also a Blazor application that are sharing code between them. And if you actually just go into MAUI itself, you're going to see that there's the Blazor hybrid one there too. So you'll see that. So when you create that, I'm going to open this one here, you're going to get basically 3 projects. Over here, you get, I can't zoom in because I'm not inside of a dev box. I forget that I'm inside of a computer. It's inside the computer. We're going to get my MAUI app. So this looks exactly like a MAUI app. We have our Blazor app, which is a Blazor app, and a bunch of shared code. So we have like pages that are Razor. We have layouts here, all that good stuff that's there. The main difference is that if I open the main page of my MAUI app, we're going to see that I have a Blazor web view component. So it's taking a native page, and what it's doing is it is going to render the actual UI that is a web view control there. And that's going to run natively on each platform. So it's still going to create an actual Windows application. So it's a WinUI application, but all of this UI is Blazor. Now there's a cool thing, which is choose pick. If I open that up, I can pick this Millie pick. And that's my dog. Whoa, cute demo. I had to show this dog.
You look like your dog.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. There's
you have the same hair. It's a good thing. Your dog is so cute.
She's a senior dog. She's diabetic and blind. And she's adopted.
She's still a cutie.
She's super cute. So I'll take it. I guess I'm cute too. Cool. Yes, it is true. As I've worked longer on .NET MAUI, my hair does turn more salt and pepper. That is correct. All right. So that's my dog. But the few things are happening here. You're like, wow. I just chose a image, a dialogue. It also says like I'm running. It says on a tablet, which is funny because I guess that's what this is set up for on the tablet view. And then also WinUI. Oh, and the S&P 500 up 1.246%. That's great. So what happened there? Well, this view over here is actually this Razor over here. So this is kind of cool. And I can do conditional compilations. I can say if Android, iOS, if Windows, I can do special things here in this code, which is really neat. But additionally, what's nice is that I've integrated in this iPhoto service. So kind of an iPhoto picker. So I can implement that on web or on mobile. So if I go over and I look over here of how I integrated that really quick, is on my MAUI app, I have a photo taker over here, which is going in and saying, hey, use the built-in .NET MAUI abstractions to pick a file. And when I pick it, return that photo to me asynchronously. So I've integrated that into my MAUI app. So even though I'm inside of a web view, I can access those native APIs, which is absolutely delightful, which is cool. So I have access to that. And there's so many options in here. I don't know how to stop it. So I'm going to say debug, stop debugging. And the cool part here is that I'm sharing all of this code with my web app. So if I set that as my startup project, just like that, and I run that, we're now going to see that I have my web application that's using all the same user interface, but running on my Windows device too. So this enables that flexibility. Now you can pick and choose a little bit of Blazor or a lot of Blazor as well. So you can have like 100% UI that's shared between all of them, or you can have just a little bit. So here's my exact same application. And you can see there's no button here because I haven't implemented the photo picker and I've conditionally compiled that out. So the same exact UI, same exact stuff working between all of them, which is neat. So you get that flexibility. Now on top of that, awesomeness, we also have something new coming in .NET 9, I think, which is a hybrid web view. So we saw a Blazor web view, which enables you to take Blazor controls and bring them in. But a lot of people say, hey, I have existing React or Angular stuff. Can I just shove that in my .NET MAUI application? Yeah, you totally can now. So now with the hybrid web view, you can put that as a control in your .NET MAUI application, and you can embed your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript into it, and you can do two-way communication between your JavaScript and your C# back and forth there. So you can pick and choose. You can put all these technologies together. Look at all of those boxes, pull them all together. If you want to learn more about this, Sam has a talk upcoming on Thursday about building hybrid apps with .NET MAUI. So definitely check that out because again, we want it to be flexible there. Cool.
All right. So back to native development with .NET MAUI, because even if you're using Blazor Hybrid, it's all still inside of a .NET MAUI app, and you want access to all the native things. So quick refresher from earlier, .NET MAUI provides all of the abstractions and flexibility, and we're going to want access to the native stacks and the native bindings and components, and choose whatever is most important for you. So what exactly does native mean? That just means that you have access to the same thing that all of the native language developers have for each of the platforms. So whether it's the Java Kotlin APIs and Android X libraries on Android, or UI Kit on Mac and iOS, and so forth, you have access to it all. And as we mentioned, you have access not only to the underlying APIs, but also the abstractions for common features, just like with the controls. So accessing the device sensors, geolocation, networking, all of that is a breeze. Here's a quick example showing it for geolocation. Literally just a few lines of code gets you the last cache location or allows you to make a call to retrieve the real-time location as well. It's really just that easy.
Yeah, that's cool.
What did I do?
Oh, did you hit the blackout button? There you go.
Yeah, I guess I did.
Nice.
My bad. So what about for the other libraries that are out there that aren't quite built into .NET MAUI in the box? Things like Firebase and other popular iOS or Android libraries? Well, that's where our bindings and binding technologies come in. So previously, I mentioned bindings more in the context of core bindings that the .NET MAUI team creates, but we also expose that same binding technology to our .NET MAUI users, so you can bring in whatever libraries that you want to bring into your .NET MAUI apps as well. And there's a method of doing this which we call traditional bindings, which allows you to bind the full library. But also there's an alternative approach called native library interop, which is more helpful when it comes to binding a slimmer API surface, which oftentimes that's really all you need.
Like you need like one method or one control or just
I don't need the whole library.
Yeah,
just
track James's location API.
Yeah, not everyone's location, just James.
Just James, if James wants to match.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what native library interop is about. If you're familiar with the world of .NET MAUI, you may have heard slim bindings tossed around before. This is the new name for it, native library interop. And essentially how it works is you create a native project, so an Xcode project or an Android Studio project, and you bring in the native library there, and then you build your custom native APIs, and then the .NET binding project will generate the C# version of those APIs, which then gets referenced right in your .NET MAUI app, or .NET for Android, .NET for iOS, .NET for Mac Catalyst apps as well. This is the same chart just showing exactly how it works, broken down if you have it both on the Xcode side and the Android side. You're going to have your Xcode project and your Android Studio project and so forth. Okay, I rushed through that because I wanted to show it to y'all.
Yeah, we still got time. We got like 5 minutes. Cool.
So, all right.
You're up.
Okay, great. So we have this MAUI.native library interop in the community toolkit. And it's a repo that has a bunch of sample bindings here. So you can see Facebook, Firebase, Google Cast to start. And so you can actually use these bindings that have been built just directly. You can just copy these straight into your app. But we also have a template one that helps you to get started with creating your own binding as well. And so I'm going to be showing you this template. So I literally cloned MAUI native library interop repo. I have it right here. And you can see it looks exactly the same. I have my template. And in each of these folders,
Perfect.
So in each of these folders that represents a binding, Facebook, for example, you have Android, Mac iOS, and sample folders. And then in each of those, I'm just going to go through the template one. In the Android one, you have this native directory, which represents your native Android Studio project.
Like Kotlin or Java stuff.
Yeah. So I would open this directly in Android Studio. And then in the, let's see if I can find it. You know what, let me see. Let me just see if I can open it in Android Studio, actually. Android Studio. Koala. Okay. Oh, I have it here. How convenient. So that native directory I can open directly in Android Studio. I can set my versions here. If I have a different version of Android Studio I want to set the minimum version to. And then in this Java file, I can define the APIs that I want. And this is super helpful. It is in Java, but it's super helpful because we can directly just use whatever documentation the library provides, copy paste it, rework it directly here, and it really helps with maintenance that way. So that's super helpful. So we see here, the template comes with a get string.
Nice.
You return a string from Java. And so that is the Android Studio project that is in this native folder. And then this new binding, .android.binding, that is a .NET Android binding project. And in the CS proj here, we have a reference to some build tasks, which our engineers have helped to kind of build in some of the magic to make the C# generating of the generating of those APIs into C# as easy for you as possible. So that's where that magic happens. And then same thing on Mac iOS, this native folder is going to be the Xcode project, and you're going to write those in Swift. And then here is the .NET iOS binding project.
And this is cool because you're literally now the ability to take any of those native libraries that maybe you get from a control vendor or for a device vendor or something you see open source, and you can easily create your own bindings if that's what your team needs. Now there's tons of stuff that's already done by the community, by Microsoft, but this enables that flexibility.
So you can see here we have the same getString method in Swift. And then in the .NET project, we have this generated C# version of that same thing.
That's cool.
Yep. And then in the sample folder, you can have whatever .NET app, .NET for iOS, .NET for Mac iOS, .NET for Android, .NET MAUI app that you want. And this is just the same as what we've been showing you pretty much. It's just a simple .NET MAUI app. And then the CS proj, we have the references to each of those binding projects. So that .NET for Mac iOS and the .NET for Android binding projects are in here so that it can consume those bindings directly. And then if we check out our main page code, we have here a label. Let me see here, actually, the code behind. We wanted to update the label text to say hello community toolkit. And since we're using the binding method, it's going to say hello community toolkit from Java on the Android side, and then it's going to say from Swift on the iOS side of things. I'm just not running it right now for the purposes of time. But this is how you get started with creating a binding using native library interop, and you can customize and work from here. So that's what I did with my MAUI charts binding. So I didn't want to bind the full library because I really just wanted to make a pie chart. And you can see here, again, the structure is exactly the same as in the template. All I did is I just went into the Android Studio projects and the Xcode projects, and I edited those files to create beyond the get string, create my create pie chart APIs, and I copied this sample from what was just online. And same thing on the Mac iOS side of things. In this .NET charts.swift file, I have that get string from the template, but I also have, again, my create pie chart and all the fun stuff.
Nice.
And then in the sample, I open up the code behind again. You can see we're using compiler directives to access the different, the iOS side of things and the Android side of things separately here. And then similarly, because the implementation was slightly different, I have my logic working here separately, saying, okay, if we're on iOS or Mac Catalyst, I want to use the iOS version of the binding. And if I'm on Android, I want to use the Android version of the binding to set up my pie chart. Yeah. And then the cool thing with this example is that I was able to set it up in the code behind, but I actually prefer to do it in XAML.
Cool.
And I was able to set it up in XAML as well. And you can see I was able to generate the pie chart. So this is the sample.
That is the native actual Kotlin and Java and Objective-C code, but now running because it's native. That's cool.
Yeah. And this was super fun because we
Zero
don't have
James fans.
we don't have a built-in pie chart control.
But now you do.
Now in .NET MAUI, but I get access to all these things. And yeah, sorry. I guess you have 0.
Yeah.
But we can update this.
Yeah, we
can.
can.
We learned that we have 3 fans in the room today.
Yes. A little tiny sliver. Cool.
Yeah. So that is native library interop in a nutshell.
Perfect.
I think we have a couple more slides.
Yeah.
I recently published a blog post. So it walks through more in depth the template and the charts demo and everything that I just showed you. It's all written down in this blog post, so feel free to check that out. And our Get Started documentation also covers exactly how you can leverage the template and what bits and pieces you might want to edit to make it suitable for your app. And then, of course, there's the repo as well, where you can leverage the existing samples or contribute to it.
Nice. I'll run through the next few really quick, and then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. So the nice thing is that while we have exposed a lot of native technology, there's an amazing community and ecosystem around .NET MAUI. We actually just did, the community ran this .NET MAUI UI challenge. So there's all these different blog posts of people creating super cool UI. Actually, David, who's a PM on the team, did this post of creating a list of all these different views in like 100 different ways with MAUI, the flexibility, whether it's a list, whether it's a grid, whether it's a collection view, which is cool. There's also, of course, amazing control vendors, right? You don't have to create your own charts because you could use Telerik or Syncfusion or all these amazing control vendors that are out there that already have .NET MAUI libraries. And if you're using Blazor Hybrid, you can also use your Blazor libraries as well. But Rachel mentioned something called the .NET Community Toolkit, which there's tons of stuff out there from the community, but you might sometimes want that sort of additional stamp of approval. So engineers and PMs from Microsoft work close with community members across .NET and .NET MAUI and Windows to create these community toolkits and basically add a bunch of awesome stuff that your apps probably need, like behaviors and converters and views and alerts and things like that. It's completely open source under the community toolkit org, so you can check it out. Great documentation as well. They recently came out with a brand new release. It has maps on Windows, has a camera view, has a media element, it has semantic ordering view for more accessibility support, a lazy view, and tons more. So even though it's not in the box of .NET MAUI, it's basically in the box of .NET MAUI as well. I'm not going to show that off because we don't have time for demo, but there's a lot more coming. .NET 9, super focused on quality and also adding support for the new APIs of Android and for iOS as well. The different interop that we talked about as well, and some new native AOT support, focusing on impacting bugs, so fixing those up, enhancing the collection view, SDK quality improvements, and tons more. There's tons of great stuff going on too, and great community contributions too. So while we're not going to go deep on them, we did want to talk about native AOT. Native AOT is ahead of time compilation, and while .NET MAUI and Xamarin before it had AOT support, ahead of time compilation, there's new native AOT from the .NET team, and the .NET MAUI team is adopting that. And it means our code is trimmable. It'll result in smaller and faster packages. It's available for Android, but coming for iOS and Mac too. And what this looks like in real time is actually a huge differential in package size, size on disk, and startup time. So you can see the mono AOT, you can see the native AOT, and the difference. So anywhere between 50% reduction in startup time and over 60% reduction of package size and size on disk. So those are things that are just going to be built in the box for you automatically. Woof! Folks can get started today. Go to dot.net/MAUI or install Visual Studio or VS Code, whatever IDE you prefer. And with that, thank you. And check out this session survey. I saw a few people with their phones. Definitely give us 5 stars, like, subscribe to our channel. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm.
Like for James' dog, if anything.
She has an Instagram account, Millie the Cattle Dog, Millie, Milli. No E, that one's an intruder. Also a cute cattle dog, but anyone have an Australian cattle dog as a dog? They're fantastic. You should all have one. Rescue a dog today. And with that, we have 5 minutes.
We did it.
Wow. You can clap if you want to. That's fine. Else you can go ahead and raise your hand. Wow. It's always an awkward, like, we got 5 and you got time. And then people are like, do I wait till after? And then people start to leave. And then, I don't know. Question back over there and we'll repeat it. Can we post the slides? Yes. So that's a good question. We will get those over there. We were working on them up until this morning and we're bad. So that's not our fault, but we will get them over to Danielle and team. So yes, we'll get them there. Are we looking to add Linux support? Not at this time, no, officially into the box. If you do need Linux support, the team is focused on quality and stability first, and then add more platforms later. So for Linux, actually Javier, who's an engineer on the MAUI team, does have an open source like repo that he's been playing around with. If you just type .NET MAUI Linux, Javier, or it'll come up on GitHub. I think it's like MAUI Linux is the repo name.
Yeah, that sounds great.
It's like a playground that he's experimenting with. So there's no official support. That's from him, side project. If you do need to actually build applications for Linux today, and you're like, wow, I'm going to write Qt or something like that, or I'm going to just do some hybrid thing or leave .NET because I can't write Linux apps. You can totally write Linux apps. There's many ways of doing it. Obviously, .NET MAUI doesn't support out of the box, but things like Uno or Avalonia have support for Linux today. So Uno, UNO, like one. And then Avalonia, which is been around for a long time, has a lot of Linux support too. And there's other things out there too. So you don't have to leave. So for example, some folks today will use MAUI for their Mac and their iOS and Android apps. They might use Avalonia for their desktop apps, but all the MVVM, all the source code is the same. But if you're just like, I'm just creating Linux apps, just go that route. Totally good to go. We don't want you to leave, obviously, .NET for it, but we do hope one day and at some point to add all the platforms ever, right? We do love Linux, but just priorities and requests, yeah. Question, is there any plan to support WebAssembly? So right now we don't have support to do anything like that. The idea of supporting like WebAssembly or Web UI would be like, hey, I have a MAUI app, now just make that run in the browser, right? Just do that. We're focused more on the native approach and the hybrid approach. We think that creates the best experience. But of course, we obviously are always listening to our developers that are there. But again, if you're like, hey, I have this use case, my boss is like, you have to do this thing and pick a platform. Both Uno and Avalonia do that as well as a thing. So that way you don't have to be like, oh, I got to go write Dart code and become a Flutter developer for it, right? Again, we like to build the building blocks that we ourselves are building on, but also the community that's there. It's not like the best story at the end of the day. We would love to support everything under the sun, but it's just priorities, right? And the nice thing is that, the MAUI team and the Blazor team work together. We are one big .NET team, but there's also shared there. The biggest thing that we heard wasn't Linux, wasn't WebAssembly. We heard first and foremost from our Blazor and our web developers was, let me take my Blazor UI, all the stuff I know. I don't want to write XAML. I want to write Razor, and I want to put that in my app, and I know how to make it look great on mobile, and I'll do that stuff. And that's what we found. We did hear what you said, which is, hey, I'm a XAML developer. I want that to run on the web, but a lot quieter. We probably actually hear more for Linux support than that scenario first. But they're both valid scenarios that the team is definitely always considering in future plans. Yeah, good question, though. Any other questions here?
And to confirm, we can run iOS on Windows without a Mac, is what I wrote.
From Visual Studio 2022, you have to have an Apple developer account.
That's fine.
You have to have that, and you have to have a physical device that's plugged in there. Now, you can't deploy your app to the App Store. It's only a debug package. That's what I did. I don't have a Mac. Like, I'm not connected to Rachel's Mac. I could. Like, if I wanted to, from Visual Studio, I could connect to Rachel's Mac
to run it on the Mac, but for
run it on
iOS,
a Mac, or a simulator, an iOS simulator, and it would pop up on Windows, for example, there.
Yes.
But yes, the Visual Studio hot restart technology is there. There are limitations, but it definitely works pretty awesome.
Okay, because right now we're connecting to a Mac. The iOS
Yep.
device is connected.
Yeah, you can just plug it into your Windows machine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It can be like temperamental sometimes because like it's pure. I have no idea how it works. It's like pure magic, right? I don't even know if the engineering team is. No, I'm just kidding. No. But you know, Apple's always changing stuff and things like that. So it's kind of one of those. I mean, it's worked really well for the last several years, but it's always nice to have a Mac sitting around. So yeah. All right, we're at our time. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. And we'll hang around if you have questions as well. So thanks and have a great VS Live.
Thank you.